तो इस वीडियो में मैं आपको बताऊंगा कि आप लाइव स्ट्रीमिंग कैसे कर सकते हैं आपके मोबाइल के पबजी या फिर कोई भी दूसरे गेम प्ले की, जिसमें आपकी खुद की आवाज, आपके टीममेट्स की आवाज। तो इस वीडियो में मैं आपको बताऊंगा कि आप लाइव स्ट्रीमिंग कैसे कर सकते हैं आपके मोबाइल के पबजी या फिर कोई भी दूसरे गेम प्ले की, जिसमें आपकी खुद की आवाज, आपके टीममेट्स की आवाज। तो इस वीडियो में मैं आपको बताऊंगा कि आप लाइव स्ट्रीमिंग कैसे कर सकते हैं आपके मोबाइल के पबजी या फिर कोई भी दूसरे गेम प्ले की, जिसमें आपकी खुद की आवाज, आपके टीममेट। तो इस वीडियो में मैं आपको बताऊंगा कि आप लाइव स्ट्रीमिंग कैसे कर सकते हैं आपके मोबाइल के पबजी या फिर कोई भी दूसरे गेम प्ले
Is this wrong? Well, I just mentioned you can think of return as essentially breaking out of this function. So why is it wrong to put return false here when it was correct to put return true? Often beginners make the mistake that all the return statements should have the same level of indentation, but that's actually not true. Because look what's going to happen here. We're going to say for number in number list, and then the very first time that a number is not even, we'll say, okay, in other words, just return false. Essentially saying that this if-else statement is only going to be able to check one number because both conditions will immediately return something. So if I were to actually run this, let's go ahead and run this on, let's say 135. So that returned false correctly, but now let's put in a 2 there. It should return true, but notice it returns false because it's essentially only checking the first number since there's a return call on either condition that the first number has. So that means this return should actually not be here. In fact, where should it be? Well, I want to make sure I've already checked every single number and whether or not it's even by the time I return false. So the return false should actually be in indentation with the for loop here. So what this says is go ahead and complete the entire for loop. If this has completed and we never broke out of the function with this return statement, then go ahead and then return false. So let's go ahead and run this and see if that works. So notice 125 returns true. If I change this to 135, now it correctly returns false. Again, a super common mistake beginners make is they think all the returns have to be indented together. But we can see we really need to focus on the logic of what's happening here. We want to loop through all the numbers first, and we can use these pass statements as placeholders to essentially say don't do anything. And that'll be very useful when you have a function that needs or requires multiple return statements. Let's expand this one more level of complexity. Let's imagine that we actually want to return all the even numbers in the list. So I don't just want to say true or false, is there an even number? I actually want to return them. So let's go ahead and start adjusting our check even list. So again, what we want to do here is I want to return all the even numbers in a list. And if there are no even numbers, we'll go ahead and just return an empty list. So what do I need to do here? Well, this code may come in handy, so I'll keep it for now. But what I'm going to do is start off with an empty placeholder list. We'll say even numbers is equal to an empty list. And it's very common at the top of a function call, if you intend on returning something, if you don't have it defined as an argument, that you define it up here as some sort of placeholder. So often you'll have placeholder variables at the top of a function. So here, even numbers is essentially a placeholder for what I eventually will return. And so I'm not going to be returning true or false anymore. What do I actually want to return? I want to return the list of even numbers. So what I'm going to do here is I'll still go for every number in the number list. If I do happen to have an even number, I will append it to my even numbers list. I'll say even numbers dot append, and it's called number here, so I'll copy and paste number. Okay, so again, I'm going through the number list. If I attach an even number, I will append it to my list. Otherwise, I don't want to do anything if it's not even. And then just as before, I want to make sure we've looped through every single number in the number list before I return even numbers. So I'll come back here and say return even numbers. So again, the return here is lined up with the for loop because I want to go through the entire logic of the for loop, and only when there's an even number do I do something. And then I return the even numbers list. Let's go ahead and check this out. I'm going to delete a couple of these. So we'll say check even list. If I say 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, I run that, it returns back 2 and 4. Looks like it's working. If I say check even list 1, 3, 5, all odd numbers, I get back an empty list. Okay, that's it for this lecture. Coming up next, we're going to discuss about returning tuples for unpacking with functions. I'll see you there. Folder variables. I'm going to have a current max, and I'm going to set it equal to 0. Welcome back, everyone. In this lecture, we're going to discuss functions and returning multiple items from a function with tuple unpacking. Let's get started. Now recall that we've previously seen we can loop through a list of tuples and welcome back, everyone. In this lecture, we're going to discuss functions and returning multiple items from a function with tuple unpacking. Let's get started. Now recall that we've previously seen we can loop through a list of tuples and unpack the values within them. For example, let me create a list of tuple called stock prices. And what I'm going to do here is the first item will be a ticker and then that stock's price. So we'll say Apple is at 200, and I'm just completely making up these numbers. Then we'll say Google is at, say, $400. And then finally, we'll say Microsoft, $100. Okay, so we already know that I can actually say for item in stock prices, price, or actually for ticker and price in stock prices, print, let's say, just a ticker. Run that, and what it's doing is it's unpacking ticker and price separately, so I can do different things with them, such as ticker, or maybe I can say print price plus, let's say, 0.1 times price. So I want to see what a 10% increase would look like. So I can run that, and now I can see a 10% increase in the prices. Okay, so that's tuple unpacking. Now we've seen how we can do it with a for loop, but we can also do it with a function. So a function can actually return things as tuples, and then we can unpack the result from the function. So in the prices. Okay, so that's tuple unpacking. Now we've seen how we can do it with a for loop, but we can also do it with a function. So a function can actually return things as tuples, and then we can unpack the result from the function. So let's go ahead and do kind of a more complicated example here. Do it with a for loop, but we can also do it with a function. So a function can actually return things as tuples, and then we can unpack the result from the function.